Hi everybody, this is Bertrudor and Tarquin playing more Super Hexagon after a break. And because this game is insane, we can't really talk about it while we're playing. So we're going to talk about something else. What are we talking
Yes.
about?
And I highly recommend you
Oh,
watch these two videos side by side. One is on my channel and one is on Bertrudor's channel.
yes.
Uh,
Same video, we're just recording our own attempts.
yes.
All this music is amazing.
So if we do happen to comment on something that's going on screen, you will know what we're talking about. And yes, the music is amazing. We are talking about consoles today. Video game consoles.
Okay.
And yes, my name is Justin. That's why I typed Justin on the high score screen.
Names are a secret. Why would you do that?
Except your name's on your channel page.
Probably is. I don't even know if it is anymore. They've updated the channel page. So consoles!
Yes, they are. Yay, 12
Well,
seconds.
so my first console was a Nintendo.
As was mine.
We were not young enough for the Atari. I did have one of the Atari consoles. It was just later.
Yeah, I've played Ataris before, but I played them after I played the Nintendo. The Nintendo was really what got me into it.
Yeah, me too. Exactly the same.
Yes. So, what was your the favorite console? What was your favorite console?
I mean, I answered that years ago. Somebody, probably you, asked me that for one of my Q&A videos, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I said Super Nintendo,
Uh huh.
and I am inclined to stick with that answer. I do love the Super Nintendo controller, and I love the graphics,
Yeah.
and it's, I think that 16-bit era, for me anyway, is just the best.
Well, even if you
And
look at it, the Super Nintendo's controller, today, controllers still look like that, basically. The four
yeah,
face buttons, shoulder buttons, and etc.
they're
D-pad on
just
the left.
designed to fit your hand better.
Yeah.
Other than that, they're the same.
Yeah, I remember the Super Nintendo controller was really tiny to me. And so I bought a bootleg controller that was bigger just so that it didn't feel weird in my hand. And when I go and play a regular Nintendo controller, it feels so tiny to me.
It's interesting because I have little hands,
Yeah.
so my favorite controller was the anybody that watched my unboxing video saw it. Was the Capcom made Super Famicom controller for Street Fighter, and it's a little controller, and it just feels so good.
That little one-handed controller?
No, it's two-handed. It's
Oh,
just sort of
yeah,
at
it's
an
like,
angle.
yeah, it's a weird. I remember the thing.
It's a fantastic controller. I would love to get a USB version of that controller just for the sake of nostalgia.
I'm having to do something real quick. There we go.
But
It's
I also, so I grew up with a Nintendo like so many people, but I was one of those lucky kids who had multiple consoles. We had a Genesis and we had an Atari and we had a SNES and we had that may be where and then 64.
We absolutely did not have all of those things. We had
Yeah.
far less consoles than that, as I assume most people did.
And we had at least one Game Boy and a couple of Lynxes, an Atari Jaguar.
But a Game Boy's not a console. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well,
We can talk about handhelds later if somebody's interested in it.
I suppose.
Although I know far less about
Oh,
handhelds.
wow.
Uh, though Tiger handhelds were definitely part of my childhood. $3 and you get to play one game until the battery dies. I don't know.
The first time I played an N64, we rented it and four controllers and
Wow, you could
GoldenEye.
rent consoles?
Yeah, weird, huh?
Yeah, it is weird. I didn't know you
So
could do that.
so we rented a four-player GoldenEye console. I think I
Four
think my
controllers on a
brother
console.
my brother was visiting from Massachusetts, so four
Wow.
of us sat down and played GoldenEye. Pretty
Well, I don't
fast.
know if I ever owned GoldenEye. I think that's one of the few AAA titles on the N64 that I didn't own.
Huh.
It just I like the game, but to me it handled really slowly, really sluggishly, and I was already by that time I already played PC games,
Hey,
and the frame rate was abysmal compared to PC games. It was like I don't know 20 or 30 frames per second in that game, whereas most PC games were 60 frames a second. It just felt really sluggish to me. But that isn't to say I didn't like the game. It's just not fast enough for me. Um, but yeah, I had a Nintendo 64. I was basically a Nintendo fanboy when I was growing up. Not necessarily because I thought Nintendo was better, but that was the consoles that my parents bought, so I knew more about them. And I had the magazines, and looking at the games, it seemed to me that the Nintendo consoles had overall the better titles. But that doesn't mean I'm right. That just was the conclusion I came to.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree. But it's funny, when I was a kid, the Genesis was the cooler console. And my brothers had friends who were big Sega fans and, had Genesis and Saturn and
It was the
Sega
edgier
CD
console.
and we would borrow. That's why I owned a bunch of Nintendo games, but I only owned a couple of Genesis games because we had friends to borrow them from.
I actually have a Genesis that I bought way later. Me and one of my friends, back even before the console nostalgia craze came around, we went and bought an old Genesis and a bunch of games for it.
That's so cool.
And so I think I have about 15, maybe 10 or 15 Sega games, but I haven't beaten one of them.
Really?
Yeah. We went. I think he worked at a GameStop or an electronics boutique, whatever it was called back then. And so I don't know if he got discounts or if he just sold them to me for the price that they got them from the customers. I don't remember. But yeah, I got a good deal on them.
How long ago was this?
Back when GameStop still sold Nintendos and Segas and stuff. Before they became all corporate and were like, we're only going to support the most recent generation of consoles. Yeah, before that. So I'm assuming it was about 10 years ago. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
What recent consoles do you have? I have a PS2 and a 360, and I am not interested in getting a Xbox One at all.
Oh, no, me neither.
And I may, if The Last Guardian is on PS4, I may get one.
The last PlayStation I had was a PlayStation 1. I really didn't keep up with the PlayStations, even though, as we were talking about before this recording, it seems to me like the PlayStation is the only strong console remaining in this new generation. They're the only ones that have been consistent, just with what vague news I've kept up with on the consoles. But the newest console that I own is a Wii, and I have about 15 or 20 games for that as well. Seems like that usually is where I max out at, about 15 or 20 games on a console. But I still play it every once in a while. I played Lego Star Wars and Kirby and Mario and stuff like that, the AAA titles.
My PlayStation is right over there on my desk, and it's out with the TV. I could hook it up and play it in 5 minutes, but it's just easier to play on my computer where I am all day anyway.
I'm definitely a PC gamer now, that is for sure. Or rather, you could be more specific and say I'm a Steam gamer.
Yeah.
Because most of what I play is on Steam.
Yeah, I'm not going out and buying the AAA titles, The Witcher or whatever else is on there.
Well, I'm an indie
on
gamer.
PC, the games that, I just get indie games.
Well, and Steam is really good about keeping the the indie games up to date on there.
Yep, and as often or infrequently, whatever you want to say, as I play video games, pretty much the Humble Bundles keep me stocked.
Yeah, me too.
By the time I've exhausted the last one, another one's out.
Yeah, I've still yet to play games in the first Humble Bundle I ever bought.
Oh yeah, me too.
And it's not because I don't want to play them, it's because I haven't gotten around to them.
Still have time, because I want to play through XCOM again more.
I want to see you play through XCOM. But anyways, back to the whole
console.
console topic. I'd say the reason that I am a Steam gamer on the PC is because I think what made consoles fun to begin with is still alive in the indie gaming community.
Yeah.
So that's really why I stick to games like Super Hexagon. This is definitely a console type of game.
definitely. This reminds me of, the Tetris era puzzle games you'd get on the NES.
Yeah, indie games seem like they are uh, trying to keep what made games fun when we were kids alive. And that's what I like about indie games.
Yeah, they're very similar to the consoles that we grew up with.
Yep, the
Games on
Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PlayStations, all that stuff.
Yep.
So, what all consoles have you had or still have?
Other than the ones I just mentioned, we may have had a
You
PS1.
You mentioned the PlayStation 2 and the N64, Super Nintendo, Nintendo, and Sega.
Yep. So we had an Atari, we had an NES, we
Oh,
had
yeah,
an
an
SNES, a Genesis, Jaguar, PS2, maybe a PS1, 360, and a N64. I think that's everything. Oh, and also a TurboGrafx 16.
Oh man, I'm jealous. A lot of my favorite games are on the TurboGrafx, but I never had one and never knew anyone that had one. So the only way I was ever able to play the TurboGrafx was on the computer.
It,
And
it
there's
was
a
a
lot
fun
of really
little
good
console.
games.
I enjoyed it.
It was made by gamers. The NEC,
Yeah.
they were the people that did the Hudson games, the like Adventure Island and stuff. They already knew games, and then they made a console.
I remember thinking at the time that it seemed a lot like the Genesis. The games we had, at least, were pretty much Genesis
Yeah,
games.
there were a lot of
Like we-
arcade-style games on the.
Yeah, like we had a
NEC.
copy of Splatterhouse, for example.
Yeah,
And Columns was another one.
Columns. I remember that game.
So,
I was
one thing
like,
I don't
wow,
like-
this is not Tetris. Every time I played Columns.
One of my sisters really loved Columns, but it was never my... I like Dr. Mario, so
Oh, Dr. Mario is great.
that was what I... Wow, this is not Dr. Mario. That was my reaction.
I
played
actually,
Columns. I played it plenty. It was just,
well, Kelly, my wife, she grew up and had a Game Boy, hand-me-down Game Boy from her cousin, and it had Tetris on it.
nice.
And I never had Tetris on the Game Boy
Can't
because
prove that.
I bought the Game Boy with the Link's Awakening pack
Okay.
years after the Game Boy came out. But she liked Tetris, and she didn't really like any newer games. This has since changed because she's married to a gamer.
Yeah,
But
she
I
plays
showed
Minecraft.
her. I said, "What kind of games do you like?" And she said, "Tetris." I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to try to find some other games." So I showed her stuff like Kirby's Avalanche and Columns and all that kind of stuff, and she didn't really like any of them. But then I showed her Dr. Mario, and she fell in love with it.
Oh,
So
cool.
she is a huge Dr. Mario fan.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So one thing I don't like, so there's within the gaming community, especially you hear it all the time on like Game Station, whatever gamers that do commentary on games, and they're always talking about how PC gamers are better, and they don't understand why people would be console gamers.
Who says this?
Oh, everybody.
Okay.
Anybody that has a $2,000 PC says this.
Mm-hmm. Me and Kelly were having this conversation too a couple of days ago, and I was wondering it too. So why would somebody be a console gamer?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. Maybe it was the same day you were talking about it. Maybe something we were talking about sparked it in both of us.
Probably.
But there are a couple of elements that are really appealing to just being a console gamer. One of them, like I said, is it's much cheaper.
Oh yeah. That didn't even cross my mind as a reason.
Yeah, well, to get a console and an extra controller and a couple games, it'd be $500 at most.
Yeah, but
That much.
But
Whereas
overall,
to
it
get a computer, it'll play. I don't even know what the big title these days is, but to get the top
like
end
Mass
computer,
Effect or something like that,
yeah, several $1,000s.
or I don't know what games. I can't think of any right now. But
I don't know.
because I play all these indie games, they're new
so
games,
out of-
but they don't push the graphical power of a PC by any means.
We're just so out of the loop. Amazing.
But what I was gonna say was, the consoles may be cheaper as the hardware goes, but it seems to me like PC games are cheaper. So if you're a huge gamer, you in the long run you would end up spending less money on a PC and computer games,
Oh yeah. I would
especially if
definitely-
you're a Steam gamer.
I definitely think that anybody that plays top-end games all day, every day, should do it on a computer. Well, except here another reason is um, the setting. You know, if you're at your desk at your computer, that's a very business-like setting. You know, sitting up straight in your office chair
Well,
and
theoretically sitting up
focused
straight.
on a monitor that's less than a foot away.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Whereas console gaming is in your living room
It's
on
more
a couch
casual.
with the controller, kicking back, drink in hand, that sort of thing.
Well, another thing that I was thinking about that makes consoles better is the uh, guaranteed peripheral compatibility. When you have a game on the PC, you never know whether or not your controllers are going to work with the games, but you
Yeah.
always know on a console. So it gets rid of the headache of finding multiple peripherals that work right, having the right operating version of the operating system and version of the game, that kind of stuff. With the
Well,
console, you just stick the game in there and you know. So it requires less brain power to get the game running.
and that goes into what I think the third reason is. And so those first two reasons, I've heard other people say them,
Uh huh.
but I think another big reason is that it's just simple.
Mm-hmm.
If I buy a console and a game, I know they go together.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah. The game
Whereas
says what
computers,
console it's on.
yeah, it's and big serious gamers don't understand that because they spend their time on this stuff and they care about this stuff. But
it's not something that's hard to contemplate.
yeah, if I just want to kick back and play a game on occasion, then I don't want to have to install it and set it up and make sure it's compatible with my graphics card and my sound card and all this stuff. I don't even know how that stuff works.
And change the priority settings on your computer. Make sure you have the latest version of Java.
Yeah.
Take out disk 1, insert disk 2. That kind of stuff.
I don't know if that still happens.
Make sure you have a Blu-ray drive to play your latest games. I don't even know the last time I bought a hard copy of a game. I mean, well, I guess it was the Wii, but I don't remember the last time I bought a PC game with a hard copy.
Oh, wow.
It's been since the 90s, probably.
I know when it was Mystery Exile.
I don't know when that came out. 90s?
A long time ago.
Mystery Exile. Let's see, the last game that I bought a CD for, gosh, it was probably Diablo 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was, what, 99, 2000, something like that?
Well, I was still living in Canandaigua, so probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Most of the games I buy the Humble Bundles. Those are the only things
Yeah.
I can justify paying that money for, because I just don't make enough money to support my gaming habits, which is probably for the better,
Yeah.
because I don't play them all very much anyways.
So you and I were talking about consoles were going to die, and the main reason I think they aren't is because they're just
Easy.
so accessible.
Mhm.
Because, I went to visit family not long ago in New York, and my 5-year-old nephew can operate the console.
Mhm.
He can put in the game, he can turn it on, he can play.
Oh yeah, my old roommate, he had a son. It was me and him and his son lived together, and his son was
I
4
sure
years
hope
old.
I sure hope he's 5 years old now that I'm thinking about it. I might have gotten that wrong. Anyway, go on.
Well, his son was 4 years old, and he had a GameCube and a couple of games like SpongeBob, some kind of a 3D SpongeBob game, and Jack and what was that game? Sly Cooper or something like that.
Okay.
And he was better at those games than I was.
Yeah.
He could pick up that controller and do stuff with the controller, the combos and the reflexes that I've never been able to do. And I grew up playing consoles.
Huh.
So, but I was not, I think I was 5 or 6 when I first got a console. Maybe 4. But it's just baffling to me how much more advanced children's reflexes are even than ours were. And we grew up playing things that required reflexes.
Yeah, we had a console before, like, farther back than my memory goes. So I know my brothers were playing Nintendo before, farther back than I can remember. I recently recorded 3D World Runner, which was one of the first games I ever played.
Such a good game.
And it certainly is silly. And
It's just simple fun.
there's a simple story where, oh, that's time. Simple story where
Okay, kill yourself.
collected first time we played it, you collected a mushroom and it killed you, because in Mario, mushrooms are good. And I don't actually remember that. I just remember them talking about that experience.
Best time.
Yes. Oh, best time. 44.31.
Wow. You wiped the floor with me. 23:12.
Oh, that's not too bad. I think
It's
my
too
average...
fast for me. I haven't practiced this one.
Okay. So everybody, this has been Bertrudor and Tarquin playing Super Hexagon. Thanks for watching.
Bye.